The grand hall of Valeran shimmered like the inside of a jewel, all gold-ribbed arches and vertical pools of liquid light. The scent of ozone and molten glass clung to the air. The Athari preferred their ceremonies blistering with heat and grandeur. Ambassador Lyra Voss stood alone on the obsidian presentation platform, the only human in a room of thousands. Her gray diplomatic uniform was modest, unarmed, unarmored, thin, as designed. Above her on the royal dais sat the emperor and his brood, long, spine figures coiled in regal laziness. Their scales glistened green-black under the chamber's heat lamps. Around them, officials, nobles, warriors. Their stares were unblinking. Lyra was a stillness among motion. The edges of her coat were perfectly aligned, her breathing barely perceptible. She watched with measured curiosity, noting every gesture, every tilt of chin, every flick of a barbed tail. Prince Virex rose. At a lean 7 feet, he was young by Athari standards, but already known for his viciousness and pride. He walked with the swagger of someone untested but certain of his superiority, the worst kind of predator. "Uman," he said, voice like sharpened gravel. "You stand in our sacred hall as a guest. You breathe our air. What gift have you brought?" Lyra bowed at the waist. "Only peace and recognition of your empire's sovereignty." "Peace," Virex repeated, tasting the word like something sour. He paced toward her with slow, deliberate steps. "Your kind speaks often of peace. But when the Vorn Empire insulted you, their moons shattered. When the cleft brokered lies, their envoy ships disappeared. There were misunderstandings," Lyra said mildly. "And yet," he continued, circling her now, "you arrive without offering, without display. You ask to stand in our house, without kneeling. Why should we tolerate such quiet arrogance?" Lyra remained still. "Protocol 47A ensures." Virex struck. His leg came up like a whip. A single, savage kicked her aside. The impact launched her off her feet. She hit the floor hard, sliding across polished stone, ribs cracking against the edge of a ceremonial step. Gasps rippled through the hall, not of shock, but pleasure. Athari nobles laughed. Clawed hands applauded. A few scribes even took notes. Lyra didn't move at first. She lay where she'd fallen, hair disheveled, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. The silence stretched. The Emperor's eyes gleamed with amusement. Then, slowly, she rose, not a tremble in her fingers, not a twitch in her brow. She straightened her coat with methodical care, wiped her mouth with the edge of her sleeve, looked up at Prince Virex, and smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile used in Earth's high-stakes diplomacy, the kind you show to target before a drone strike. She bowed again, deeper this time. "Message received," she said softly. There was a flicker of confusion on Virex's face, but it passed. He turned his back on her, triumphant. The hall resumed its motion, attention already drifting away. The human had been humiliated, order restored. Lyra walked out alone. The transport back to the embassy was silent. She didn't wince, didn't groan. The armored interior hummed gently as it glided through Valeran's vertical arteries of traffic. Inside, her attaché, Lieutenant Imari, stared at her in pale horror. "Ambassador, they assaulted you. In open court. That violates." "I'm aware," Lyra said. Imari's voice cracked. "Should I inform Geneva?" Lyra looked out at the glowing spires of the alien capital. "No. Prepare Protocol 9B. I'll submit the formal request." "But that's—" A proportional response. "By Earth standards." Imari swallowed. "I'll begin encryption." Lyra's hands were still clasped calmly in her lap, though one rib throbbed with every breath. She focused on a rhythm of pain, mapping its origin, counting the seconds between flares. Controlling the body helped still the mind. They thought they understood humans. Soft skin, open mouths, always talking about peace and rights. They had no idea. Hours later, in the quiet of the Earth Embassy's war room, Lyra sat before a black console. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She typed just one sentence. "Permission to engage per Protocol 9B. Target, Athari Royal Line." She read it twice, then pressed send. The message vanished into encrypted relays faster than light. Seconds passed. Then the reply came. Approved. Cleanly. No more. No less. Lyra closed her eyes for one long moment. Then she began the work. In a chamber of molten glass and ivory some levels below, Prince Virex reclined in a perfumed pool, laughing with his courtiers. She looked so small, he said, flicking a splash of water with a Talon hand, like a hatchling. The others chuckled, mimicking human posture. Stooped, meek, ridiculous. Do you think they'll protest? Asked one. Virex snorted. Protest? They'll send flowers. Or maybe another pathetic statement of concern. Earth bleeds ink, not blood. Above them, in the orbital shade of Valerian's moons, an invisible signal blinked across Earth's covert fleet. An awakening. Engines spun up in total silence. Back in her private quarters, Lyra sat alone, cross-legged in dim light, a cup of cool jasmine tea untouched beside her. She breathed slowly, felt the bruise darken beneath her skin, and she waited. The Earth Embassy on Valerian resembled a monolith carved from obsidian and frost, cold, smooth, opaque. A single flag fluttered outside its entrance, silver on black, the Earth emblem. No guards were visible, no defenses apparent. But beneath the surface, it hummed with intelligence. Ambassador Lyra Voss entered the operations chamber just after sunrise. Her coat was fresh, every seam razor-sharp. A thin patch beneath the fabric regulated her bruised ribs, numbing pain without slowing cognition. Lieutenant Imari stood at attention. Her eyes flicked over Lyra's uninjured expression. The message is confirmed, she said. Reply authenticated via prime clearance. Lyra nodded. Execute Protocol 9B. Imari hesitated, just a blink. Understood. No alarms rang. No orders barked. Instead, the embassy shifted quietly. Systems rerouted power, defense satellites repositioned. A civilian courier drone launched from the rooftop, carrying nothing more than ceremonial chocolates. But embedded within its packaging was an AI payload designed to infiltrate Athari surveillance grids. Across Valerian, cameras blinked once, then began lying. Athari news feeds exploded with coverage of the royal ceremony. Prince Virex's disciplinary gesture was heralded as a reaffirmation of traditional dominance. Analysts praised his control. Social feeds replayed the footage on loop, a human folding beneath his heel. Lyra's image became a meme. They didn't even blur her face. But the human embassy said nothing. Not a single press release. Not a single comment. And that silence unnerved them more than any retaliation could. Within the Athari Ministry of Foreign Powers, tension began to mount. Diplomats conferred behind scorched glass doors, voices low and taut. Should we issue a clarification? Hissed Chancellor Trock. A gesture of civility? They should be thanking us for restraint, barked Commander Valex. They came to our court unarmed. The prince merely demonstrated reality. Then why haven't they protested? Silence. Perhaps they are planning a lawsuit? Another offered unconvincingly. Trock exhaled sharply. No, this isn't legal posturing. This is calculated. Lyra met with no one. She attended no galas. She declined all invitations from the royal palace. When questioned by local media, she responded only through official channels. Ambassador Voss is currently in high-level deliberations. Earth remains committed to interspecies diplomacy and peaceful resolutions. It was diplomacy's version of a hell breath. Inside the embassy, the real work continued. Lyra reviewed blueprints of the Ascension Hall, the royal venue designated for Prince Virex's elevation to crown heir the following night. Every corner, every entry point, every ventilation shaft was mapped and modeled. Agents deployed not soldiers, but specialists in microsabotage and neural countermeasures. 2 technicians delivered a gift of admiration to the palace kitchens, a crate of Terran fruit laced with timed chemical markers. Another team sent ceremonial robes embedded with nanite dispersal threads, woven so fine they passed Athari scan thresholds. None of the agents spoke to Lyra. They didn't need to. Imari approached her late in the evening. Ma'am, if I may... Lyra looked up from her terminal. Imari's voice was steady. Do you want him dead? Or is this symbolic? Lyra studied her. Protocol 9B isn't symbolic, but the entire royal line. This is a revenge, Lieutenant. She rose, walking toward the viewport. Below, the Athari city glittered, alive, arrogant, oblivious. This is a demonstration, Lyra said, of restraint, of consequence. She turned back, voice calm. We don't start wars. We end them before they begin. Far above Valerian's atmosphere, a fleet drifted dark among the stars. No lights, no ID signals. Human stealth cruisers ran silent, fully cloaked, riding gravity currents to avoid detection. They bore no weapons that would raise alarms, but each carried enough precision ordnance to erase a species without a single explosion. That wasn't the plan. Not yet. Commander Aranyao, orbiting aboard Sable Dawn, monitored every embassy signal. Confirmation code just came through, she said to her exo. Primary assets greenlit. Final timetable, he asked. Yao's lips barely moved. Tonight, inside the palace, preparations for the Ascension Ball intensified. Prince Virex preened in front of an engraved mirror, tail twitching. They're probably still recovering, he muttered, adjusting the silver-gold collar of his ceremonial robes. Or drafting a complaint. Offered a servant. Virex grinned. Let them. I'll be crowned heir by the next cycle. Earth will bend. His laughter filled the chamber. In a far corner, unnoticed by either, the ceremonial sash delivered that morning glimmered slightly. It had been dusted with nanofibers too small to see, too deadly to ignore. Back in the embassy, Lyra sat alone in a quiet, windowless chamber, a meditation room lined with basalt. No screens, no sound. She breathed in, counted to 6, breathed out. She did not think of vengeance. She did not replay the kick or the laughter or the bone-deep ache in her side. She thought only of what came next. Precision, discipline, message control. When she opened her eyes, she reached into a small drawer at her side and removed a single item, a black pendant no larger than a coin. Earth's diplomatic override seal, its final warning before war. She placed it around her neck, tucked it beneath her shirt, and stood. The Ascension Ball would begin in 2 hours. By then, the kitchen staff would have prepped the fruit arrangements. By then, the sashes would have been distributed. By then, the central atmospheric scrubbers, recently upgraded by a gifted Earth engineering crew, would have calibrated to release a targeted aerosol. The chemicals were not lethal. Not directly. They simply triggered a dormant neural sequence in Athari biology, one identified years ago during first contact medical exchanges. Induced temporary paralysis. Slowed the heart. Left the mind aware. The rest would be handled, quietly, by humans. Lyra reviewed the operations checklist one last time. Nothing spoken aloud. Every agent already in place. Every move accounted for. Imari stood by, tension in her shoulders. Everything's ready, she said. Lyra nodded. Do you want to dress the team? No. She picked up her coat, buttoned it once more. I'll see them all tomorrow. The Ascension Hall rose from the center of Valerian like a thong of crystal and bone, carved from translucent quartz, reinforced with etched alloys. Its upper towers glowed gold under the twin moons, casting reflections that rippled across the city skyrails. Inside, the great chamber buzzed with celebration. The Athari elite moved in glittering spirals, tails coiled beneath flowing robes, voices low and smug. Palace guards stood in ceremonial poses, armor polished, blades unused. Overhead, a lattice of thermal vents hissed softly, keeping the heat oppressive, perfect for reptilian revelry, suffocating for most others. Tonight was Prince Virex's coronation as heir ascendant. He was already drunk on attention, basking in the center of the hall beneath a hovering sphere of light, dressed in layered ceremonial sashes and shoulder armor embossed with imperial glyphs. He radiated youthful arrogance. His tail flicked in amusement as nobles offered toasts, each one more sycophantic than the last. And to the human ambassador, one of them smirked, so very quiet these days. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Virex grinned. Perhaps she learned her place. Lyra Voss entered the hall precisely 13 minutes after the third bell. Her gown was black and austere, a Terran diplomatic dress, simple, high-collared, and utterly lacking the shimmer or ostentation of the Athari finery. No jewelry, no visible tech, just a seal of earth pinned over her heart in brushed steel. Heads turned. Conversation stalled. She walked with even steps, eyes forward, not a flicker of discomfort in the sweltering heat. The Athari watched the way predators observe a strange animal that doesn't run. Virex spotted her from across the hall. His smile widened. "Well," he said loudly, "our little diplomat survived." Lyra bowed once, crisp and slow. "Prince Virex, congratulations on your elevation." "Tell me," he said, striding closer, "is Earth here to submit at last?" A hush fell around them. Lyra tilted her head. "Earth submits to no empire." Murmurs rose, but Virex only chuckled. "Still proud, even after my lesson." "Ah," she said, voice mild. "Yes, that moment." Virex frowned slightly, thrown off by her calm. Then he leaned in, too close. "Tell me, human, what do your people think of my strength?" Lyra looked him in the eye. They considered a data point. Before he could reply, she stepped back and offered a second bow. "May your night be memorable." Then she moved through the crowd, disappearing among the flowing scales and echoing music. Across the hall, above the main arch, a servant adjusted the air filters. He was young, indistinct, easily ignored. He placed a hand on the vent casing, triggered the sequence with a subtle press, and walked away. Elsewhere in the kitchens, decorative fruit platters were arranged on hovering trays, garnishes precisely placed by culinary bots, overseen by Athari chefs impressed by Earth's exotic imports. They never noticed the slight variance in texture on the Terran grapes. In the robing chambers, a noble woman smoothed the fabric of her sash. She admired the shimmering thread, not knowing it was interwoven with microfilament sensors and delivery systems. Every piece moved into place, every vector aligned, and still no alarm sounded. Lyra stood near a cooling fountain at the edge of the hall, watching the court spin itself into decadence. A server offered her a drink. She declined. Instead, she touched the pendant beneath her collar, Earth's diplomatic override seal, and activated its silent protocol. No light, no sound, just confirmation. From orbit, aboard Sable Dawn, Commander Yao watched the green icon flash across her HUD. "Signal received," she said. "Phase 2 go." Confirming agent readiness, her exo replied. "Execute on mark." Back on the surface, it began. The first sign was subtle. An older general at the far end of the room paused mid-sentence. His hand trembled, his pupils dilated. Then his breathing slowed, and stopped. Moments later, a noble collapsed into her drink, tail twitching. Someone screamed. Prince Virex turned, confused. "Guards!" he barked. "Medic teams!" But the medics were already down. The fruit platters had been served. The robes had been donned. The air, altered at a molecular level, had flowed for 20 minutes. Lyra didn't move. She simply stood at the edge, watching as nobles dropped one by one. Some twitched. Others simply sagged into their seats, paralyzed. Not dead. Not yet. The neural disruption would keep their minds intact. They would feel everything. The Emperor collapsed last, choking, reaching toward his son with a trembling claw. Only Virex remained standing, his eyes wide, breath shallow. He stumbled backward, tearing at the sash across his chest. What have you done?" Lyra stepped forward. The room, once filled with heat and sound, was now heavy with silence and shallow gasps. "You made a mistake," she said, approaching him. He backed away, bumping into a dying scribe. This is war. This is a declaration." "No," she said quietly. "This is a message." Virex fell to one knee. His limbs spasmed. He looked up at her, sweat soaking his scales. "You can't do this." "You already did," she replied. "I'm just answering." He tried to stand, failed. "You killed them all." Not yet, she said, but soon. Lyra crouched beside him. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Earth has rules. We do not strike first. We offer peace, respect, diplomacy, but we are not prey. You put your foot on an Earth ambassador in open court. She leaned in closer, and the universe watched. Vyrex's eyes fluttered. Mercy. Lyra straightened. You would have broken my ribs for applause. You don't understand mercy. He collapsed forward, unmoving. 30 minutes later, Lyra walked alone from the Ascension Hall. No guard stopped her. None remained standing. Her heels echoed on the crystal floors. Outside, the air was cooler, the stars overhead unbothered. A black shuttle waited at the edge of the ceremonial promenade. Imari met her at the ramp. All objectives confirmed, she said. Entire royal line accounted for. No civilian spillover. No structural damage. Lyra nodded once. The others, she asked. Diplomatic envoys are already reaching out. Quiet inquiries. Private congratulations. Nobody wants the Athari throne, but everyone wants our favor. Lyra stepped aboard the shuttle. As the hatch sealed behind her, she finally allowed herself a breath. Not relief. Precision. Prince Vyrex regained consciousness seconds before the nanites reached his heart. He gasped a ragged, choking sound and blinked into the pale, flickering light of the Ascension Hall ceiling. The music was gone. So were the voices. Only the faint hum of the climate vents remained, struggling to push air into a room full of paralyzed giants. He tried to move, failed. A numb pressure bloomed in his chest, and something wet slid from the corner of his mouth. He could taste copper. His tail twitched involuntarily, then stilled. Footsteps approached, measured, unhurried. He didn't need to look up to know who it was. Lyra Voss crouched beside him, one knee brushing the edge of his fallen sash. Her coat was untouched, her face unreadable. In her hand, she held a ceremonial Athari dagger, curved, jeweled, decorative. He stared at it, his pupils dilating. I didn't bring this, she said quietly. You gave it to me earlier this evening, as a diplomatic courtesy. His lips trembled. Help, me? You know, she said, tilting her head. In most species, royalty is sacred, untouchable. Killing a royal line usually triggers galactic war, embargo, retaliation. He coughed. Blood pooled on the floor. But in this case, she continued, no one cares. Vyrex tried to speak. Just air. Lyra stood. Your empire relied on fear. Tradition. The idea that no one would dare cross you. But you forgot something. She looked down at him, calm as glass. Humans are slow to anger, but we don't bluff. He made a gurgling noise, tried to lift a hand. It didn't rise past the floor. You kicked a human diplomat, she said, in front of 12 sovereign delegations. You didn't just touch Earth. You embarrassed it. Her voice dropped. And Earth doesn't do humiliation. She placed the dagger on the floor, beside his hand. Point first, bloodless, a courtesy. Then she walked away. Outside the Ascension Hall, the city of Valerian glittered as it always had. Skyrails hummed. Traders barked in a dozen tongues. Holograms flickered above towers, announcing tomorrow's markets and last cycle's sports scores. The news of what happened inside hadn't reached them yet. It would. Lyra stepped into her transport shuttle. Imari was already seated, eyes on a handheld screen. Security feeds have been overwritten, the lieutenant said. We replaced the palace recordings with pre-loop ceremony footage. No external leaks. And casualties? Lyra asked. 46 dead, 12 paralyzed, 3 unconfirmed. The line of succession is broken. Lyra leaned back in her seat. And no one's knocking on our door? Imari shook her head. Not yet, but they're listening. You made sure of that. Across Valeran, the Athari High Command scrambled to react. Emergency protocols failed. Half the royal advisors were dead or catatonic. The Senate convened briefly, only to realize the chain of command had snapped clean through. In the absence of central leadership, regional governors locked down their own systems. Some called for vengeance. Most called for quiet. But all of them feared one thing. The humans had made their move, and not a single Terran ship had fired a weapon. The massacre had unfolded in silence, and that silence screamed louder than any declaration of war. Back aboard Sable Dawn, Commander Yao watched the unfolding data cascade across her console. No Athari fleet mobilizations. No planetary evacuations. Civilian broadcasts remain intact. Her XO said. Their military's pretending nothing happened. They're buying time, Yao replied, trying to find someone to blame. Someone to crown. Someone to beg. The XO glanced at her. Should we prepare for retaliation? Yao didn't answer immediately. No, she said at last. This wasn't an act of war. It was surgical. She exhaled. We just changed the order of things. 3 hours after leaving the palace, Lyra returned to the Earth Embassy. The facade was still unassuming. Still blank. Just another government outpost. But now, everyone knew better. She walked through the quiet corridors toward the central chamber. It was empty as ordered. She didn't want witnesses. Not for this. At the center of the room, she activated a black console. It required no passcode. The system recognized her presence and began recording. Report, she said calmly. Mission complete. All high-value targets neutralized. No collateral losses. No exposure classified technologies. No violations of Treaty Clause 4. She paused, considered. Earth's diplomatic immunity has been reinforced. Then she ended the log. No flourish. No signature. Just truth. In the following hours, the interstellar network buzzed. Rumors leaked. Whispers of a diplomatic incident, an assassination, a collapse. The Athari tried to spin the event, citing food poisoning, equipment failure, religious omens. But no one believed it. The footage had been scrubbed, but silence itself was suspicious. And Lyra Voss did not hide. She remained visible. Attended a quiet gathering with the Lyrini delegation. Took tea with a Martian diplomat. Walked the central promenade of Valerian's 4 1/4 unescorted. She smiled. She bowed. She said nothing about the prince. And that was the message. At the edge of known space, where Terran exploration ships brushed against unclaimed star clusters, the impact was felt immediately. Old enemies paused their surveillance. New allies sent offers. Earth's reputation, once neutral, once diplomatic, took on a sharper shape. Now they call it something else, untouchable. Late that night, Lyra returned to her quarters. The ache in her side had dulled. The bruises had yellowed. Her posture remained perfect, but her eyes showed the fatigue of absolute control. Imari met her at the door, holding a sealed packet. Encrypted message from Geneva. Priority seal. Lyra accepted it, opened it without ceremony. The message read, Thronefall complete. Consequence administered. Status resolved. Await further assignments. At the bottom, a single line. Thank you for your service. Lyra folded the paper once and set it on her desk. Then, at last, she sat. Not to plan. Not to brief. Just to breathe. She looked out at the stars, quiet and endless. They had all seen, and none would forget.
Lyra Voss sat before a blank terminal in the Earth Embassy's diplomatic chamber, hands folded neatly in her lap. The lights overhead were dimmed, casting soft shadows across the polished walls. Outside, Valerian's skyline had shifted. Holograms bearing the royal insignia had gone dark. Flags lowered. Public broadcasts silenced. No announcement had been made. There was nothing to announce. The Athari Empire no longer had a throne. Across the galaxy, the reaction was not outrage. It was awe. On the 7th moon of Duran Prime, the Varn High Council held a closed meeting to reassess human threat classification. Within the hour, they upgraded Earth from politically unpredictable to strategically untouchable. The Ellerin Accord, a species known for their deep memory and long silences, sent a flower to the Earth consulate. One bloom. Midnight red. Its meaning, according to diplomatic texts, respect earned in silence. And on the ice-cracked ring stations of Novar Delta, mercenary fleets quietly removed Earth ships from their target libraries. Not because of what had happened, because of how it had been done. No declarations, no fleets, no fire, just consequence. In Valeran Central Plaza, a crowd gathered before the empty broadcast spire. For decades, it had streamed the royal family's messages, ceremonies, threats, announcements. Now it flickered with static. No new heir had emerged. No royal decree followed. The empire was leaderless. And the one person who had been inside the Ascension Hall that night, the only one seen walking out, remained calmly present. Not hiding, not boasting, just there, walking the market square, drinking tea at her usual cafe, reading reports in the sunlight like nothing had happened. That frightened them most of all. Inside the Earth Embassy, Lyra reviewed new directives. No retraction orders. No spin. Earth wasn't attempting to deny anything. But neither did it confirm. Imari approached, holding a thin stack of communications. 16 requests for meetings, she said. 3 from former allies of the Authari. 5 from neutral systems. 8 from factions who never spoke to us before. Lyra skimmed the list. Schedule the 3rd, 7th, and 9th, she said. Imari hesitated. The 9th is the Thalrek Combine. They once offered to dissect our linguists. Now they offer trade routes. Imari nodded and made the arrangements. By midday, a single message arrived from Authari Space. Text only. No insignia. No diplomatic protocol. The line is broken. But the blood is not. This is not over. Lyra read it once. Deleted it. No reply. At dusk, she attended a quiet reception held by the Lyrini delegation. The Lyrini were a waterborne species, translucent and musical, obsessed with ritual and memory. Their envoy greeted her with an elegant bow and a whispered phrase. Still rivers cut deepest. She bowed in return, saying nothing. Later, as she passed beneath an arch of light and mist, a diplomat from the Scaran Hive approached her in private. You used no warships, the insectoid said in a dry click. No threats. We used what was necessary, Lyra replied. You dismantled a dynasty in a single night. No, she said. They dismantled themselves. We simply made sure the lights were still on when they fell. The diplomat regarded her for a long moment, then stepped aside, wordless. That night, in her private quarters, Lyra received a call from Geneva. A man appeared on the screen, Director Elias Marin, head of Earth's Interstellar Diplomatic Corps. His voice was smooth, clear. Congratulations, Ambassador. Earth's position has never been stronger. Lyra didn't smile. It's stable. That's all we ever wanted. He tilted his head. Stability at the cost of a dynasty. Not ours. He considered that. There will be scrutiny. There should be. And Authari survivors. They'll think twice before becoming martyrs. Marin nodded, his eyes unreadable. Earth needs people like you. Lyra didn't respond. After a pause, he added, You'll have options. Other postings. Higher seats. Is there anything you want, Ambassador? She looked out the window. Valeran skyline shimmered against the dark, still beautiful even in its uncertainty. I want this to be the last time we have to prove what we are, she said. The screen went dark. 3 days later, the Authari Senate released a statement. A period of silence will be observed across Authari worlds as we mourn the loss of our royal family. No blame. No accusations. Just silence. It wasn't submission. It was survival. Lyra stood before a mirror in her quarters, adjusting her coat. The bruises were nearly gone now, her ribs healed by Earth's advanced medtech. But the memory remained. Of impact, of laughter, of the moment her name had been turned into a spectacle. She hadn't been angry. That had been the problem. Anger clouds judgment. Anger lashes out. She had responded instead, with logic, with planning, with the weight of an entire civilization behind her. One that never forgot what its dignity cost. And now the galaxy remembered too. As she exited her quarters, she passed a small child, Authari, maybe 5 cycles old, clutching his guardian's hand in the corridor outside the embassy. His eyes went wide as he looked up at her. He didn't scream. He didn't flinch. He bowed. Just slightly. She returned it with the faintest nod, then walked on. Aboard Sable Dawn, Commander Yao logged her final report. Operation complete. Human assets uncompromised. Diplomatic standing elevated. No further actions required. She closed the file. Then she opened a new one. Title: Thronefall Doctrine. Purpose: a case study in asymmetrical consequence. The galaxy, vast and teeming, continued spinning. Wars were still fought. Deals were still brokered. But whenever humans entered a room, the temperature shifted. Voices lowered. And no one raised a hand. Not out of fear. Out of memory. Out of respect.